Have you ever wondered how someone in a position of trust could use their authority to commit unspeakable crimes? This is the story of Harold Shipman, a British doctor whose horrifying actions earned him the nickname the Angel of Death. Over the course of decades, Shipman is believed to have killed at least 250 of his patients, making him one of the most prolific serial killers in history. But how did Shipman operate undetected for so long, and what forensic breakthroughs finally brought his reign of terror to an end? Harold Frederick Shipman was born on January 14th, 1946, in Nottingham, England. From an early age, Shipman showed signs of intelligence and ambition. He was the favored child in his family, particularly by his domineering mother, Vera. When Vera was diagnosed with terminal lung cancer, young Harold witnessed the pain she endured in her final days. Doctors administered morphine to ease her suffering, and this experience left a profound impression on him. It was during this time that he saw the power of medical professionals to bring both relief and death. Some have speculated that this early experience shaped his future actions and attitudes toward life and death. Shipman graduated from Leeds School of Medicine in 1970 and began practicing as a general practitioner. He quickly built a reputation as a competent and caring doctor, admired by colleagues and patients alike. However, beneath this facade, Shipman harbored a dark secret. In 1975, he was caught forging prescriptions for the opioid pethidine, which he had become addicted to. Shipman was fined and entered a rehabilitation program. But this early transgression was a harbinger of much darker deeds to come. After completing his rehabilitation, Shipman resumed his medical career, eventually establishing his own practice in Hyde, Greater Manchester. His patients adored him, describing him as compassionate and attentive. Shipman was especially popular among elderly women, who saw him as a trustworthy and comforting figure. Little did they know, they were his primary targets. Shipman's modus operandi was as chilling as it was calculated. He would administer lethal doses of morphine to his victims, often under the guise of routine care. To cover his tracks, he falsified medical records to make it appear as though the deaths were natural and expected. Because many of his victims were elderly or in poor health, their deaths rarely raised suspicion. Families trusted Shipman implicitly, accepting his explanations without question. This trust, combined with his methodical planning, allowed him to continue killing undetected for years. His meticulous approach and the trust he garnered from his patients and their families made him nearly untouchable. Shipman's reign of terror continued for decades, leaving a trail of unsuspecting victims in his wake. The sheer number of deaths attributed to Shipman eventually raised questions. Between 1975 and 1998, an unusually high number of his patients died in circumstances that seemed eerily similar. Yet, it wasn't until the death of Kathleen Grundy in 1998 that Shipman's carefully constructed facade began to crumble. Grundy, a wealthy 81-year-old widow and one of Shipman's patients, was found dead in her home shortly after a visit from the doctor. Shipman signed her death certificate, citing old age as the cause of death. However, Grundy's daughter, Angela Woodruff, became suspicious when she discovered that her mother's will had been altered to leave her entire estate to Shipman. Woodruff, a solicitor, knew her mother would never have made such a decision. Woodruff reported her concerns to the police, who launched an investigation. Grundy's body was exhumed, and toxicology tests revealed a lethal dose of morphine in her system. This discovery was the first concrete evidence linking Shipman to foul play. Investigators began to scrutinize other deaths in his care, uncovering a chilling pattern. Shipman had been systematically murdering his patients, falsifying records, and preying on their trust. One of the most damning pieces of evidence came from Shipman's own records. Investigators discovered discrepancies between his handwritten patient notes and the official computer records. Shipman had been retroactively altering the electronic records after his patients' deaths to make it appear as though their conditions were worsening before they died. These alterations were time-stamped, providing irrefutable proof of his attempts to cover up his crimes. The forensic analysis of Shipman's medical records played a pivotal role in his capture. By examining the patterns of his patients' deaths, investigators were able to identify clusters of suspicious fatalities. They also discovered that Shipman had a habit of administering morphine shortly before his patients died, a detail that aligned with the toxicology findings in Kathleen Grundy's case. Shipman's trial began in October 1999, and it was one of the most sensational cases in British legal history. The prosecution presented evidence linking him to the deaths of 15 patients, though the true number of his victims is believed to be much higher. Shipman's defense argued that he was a caring doctor who had been unfairly targeted, but the evidence against him was overwhelming. Witnesses testified about his unusual behavior, and the forensic evidence painted a damning picture of a man who used his position to commit unimaginable atrocities. In January 2000, Harold Shipman was found guilty of 15 counts of murder and 1 count of forgery. He was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Despite the verdict, Shipman never admitted to his crimes, maintaining his innocence until his death. On January 13, 2004, Shipman was found hanged in his prison cell, an apparent suicide. His death left many questions unanswered, including the true extent of his killing spree. The impact of Shipman's crimes on the medical community and public trust in healthcare was profound. In the wake of the case, the British government launched an inquiry known as the Shipman Inquiry to investigate how he was able to evade detection for so long. The inquiry led to significant changes in how doctors are monitored and how controlled substances are prescribed and tracked. It also highlighted the importance of listening to families' concerns and conducting thorough investigations into suspicious deaths. The case of Harold Shipman serves as a chilling reminder of how easily trust can be exploited. Shipman's ability to operate undetected for decades underscores the need for vigilance and accountability, even in professions that are typically seen as benevolent. How many other angels of death have hidden behind the veil of trust and authority? And what steps can we take to ensure that such horrors are never repeated?